Hello, everyone. Today we're going to react to the first debate between Trump and Biden, and I'll kind of explain the thinking of why I'm going to do this as we're going on, just so I don't have a really long introduction here. But today is September 3rd. I think it'll be very interesting to see this debate, revisit this debate, this incredibly consequential debate through the lens of where we are now. Kamala's the nominee. Trump and Kamala are close in the polls, etc. And we'll just get started on the debate, and I'll keep kind of cutting in and explaining some of that thinking and just also reacting to the debate in general.
And their campaigns agreed to accept these rules.
Now, please welcome the 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Folks, how are you?
How are you?
Great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
And please welcome.
So I was watching this initially by myself, then I went to watch it just kind of in a communal area in my building. So I missed, it'll be kind of interesting for me to watch this because I have not really watched this debate just completely, I guess, unobstructed. Like there are other people there, people were having conversations and what have you. So this will be interesting. Now, I did see this part though on my own. Like I fully observed this part, I guess like the first maybe 5 minutes of this debate. This already looks to me so bad. My first thought was he's just speaking to himself. What are you doing? He's like pointing at nobody and then just this little mumble, thank you for having me, thank you. And no one's even talking to you yet. At least when I was watching this, I thought he was in incredible trouble just off the bat. I'm sure other people have this thought too, but that was the worst walkout probably in presidential debate history. It already looked so bad. And I mean, Joe Biden's obviously had a tough go, but I think this even walkout was particularly bad. Like even when he walks off Air Force One, even right now, even in September of 2024, he's a little bit more with it. So yeah, that was brutal, but let's continue.
Welcome the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump.
I'll just finish this off here to see.
Gentlemen, thanks so much for...
See, pretty normal walkout. Doesn't talk to nobody, no random pointing. And then I'll say this. So this debate is about an hour and 30 minutes long. I'm only going to react to maybe the first 25 minutes because I think that's really all that's necessary in terms of the most consequential moments. Most of those major moments that went viral and got so many people in the Democratic Party behind the scenes up in arms happened towards the first 25, 30 minutes of the debate. So once the debate kind of hits the spot of being somewhat of a lull, I'll perhaps skip ahead to the golfing part if I can find it. That part's pretty funny. But I also am going to show the very end because some of the narrative they tried to spin zone this at the time was that Joe Biden just had a poor start to the debate and he finished strong. His closing remarks were anything but strong, so I'll make sure to play that part. But I'll cut out definitely the middle part because it's just not as interesting to looking at this, at least through the lens of sort of how this debate led to Joe Biden stepping down.
For being here, let's begin the debate, and let's start with the issue that voters consistently say is their top concern, the economy. President Biden, inflation has slowed, but prices remain high. Since you took office, the price of essentials has increased. For example, a basket of groceries that cost $100 then now costs more than $120. And typical home prices have jumped more than 30%. What do you say to voters who feel they are worse off under your presidency than they were under President Trump?
We got to take a look at what I was left when I became president and what Mr. Trump left me. We had an economy that was in free fall. The pandemic was so badly handled. Many people were dying. All he said was, it's not that serious. Just inject a little bleach into your arm. You'll be all right. The economy collapsed.
Already, I mean,
jobs.
This is already just a
rose
terrible. He's not answering this. He just raspy voice, attacks Trump. Already awful. And again, when I was watching this, it almost like he barely can talk.
15%. It was terrible. And so what we had to do was try to put things back together again. And that's exactly what we began to do. We created 15,000 new.
And again, I will say I'm not going to go into this debate just so much there's no real point at this point being particularly hard on Joe Biden. He already dropped out. I mean, I guess you could certainly make the argument that he's currently the president. So, but at least in the terms of this debate, because this debate's technically for the 2024 election, which he already dropped out of, I'm not going to be particularly harsh, but I'm definitely going to point out just where answers are weak and so forth.
New jobs. We brought on the position where
See, like,
we
look
have
at this.
800,000 new manufacturing jobs, but there's more to be done. There's more to be done. Working class people are still in trouble. I come from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I come of a household where the kitchen table, if the things weren't able to be met during the month, it was a problem. Price of eggs, the price of gas, the price of housing, the price of a whole range of things. That's why I'm working so hard to make sure I deal with those problems. And we're going to make sure that we reduce the price of housing. We're going to make sure we build 2 million new units. We're going to make sure we cap rents so corporate greed can't take over. The combination, what I was left with in corporate greed, is the reason why we're in this problem right now. In addition to that, we're in a situation where if you take a look at all that was done in his administration, he didn't do much at all. By the time he left, things were in chaos, literally chaos.
I hate
and
this.
so we put things back together. We created
This thing that the world was in chaos when Trump got out is so unfair and so dishonest. When the Democrats say this, I'm not saying that like the Republicans necessarily. If the shoe was on the other foot, I'm sure the Republicans would make mention of that. But the idea that it would be totally fine if the Democrats were in, because I heard Kamala make this point as well, is ridiculous. There is a 0.000% chance Democrats would have kept the economy open, not done massive lockdowns. There's just, if in 2020, that would have been politically an absolute nightmare. There's no way they would have done that. Everybody knows that. All the Democratic voters would have been up in arms if they just let the economy keep churning. No wonder so many people got laid off from their jobs. It was COVID. You just politically, you just had to do it. At least Democrats certainly would have. I mean, you can argue, I guess, that I would say hindsight 2020, you should have protected vulnerable populations and not shut down huge swaths of the economy. But do you think Joe Biden or any Democrat, Hillary Clinton, would have done that? There's no way.
I said those jobs. We make sure we had a situation where we brought down the price of prescription drugs, which is a major issue for many people, to $15 for a insulin shot as opposed to $400. No senior has to pay more than $200 for any drug, all the drugs they can include beginning next year. And the situation is and we're going to make that available to everybody, to all Americans. So we're working to bring down the price around the kitchen table, and that's what we're going to get done.
Thank you. President Trump?
We have the greatest economy in the history of our country. We have never done so well. Everybody was amazed by it. Other countries were copying us. We got hit with COVID, and when we did, we spent the money necessary so we wouldn't end up in a Great Depression, the likes of which we had in 1929. By the time we finished, so we did a great job. We got a lot of credit for the economy, a lot of credit for the military, and no wars, and so many other things. Everything was rocking good. But the thing we never got the credit for, and we should have, is getting us out of that COVID mess. He created mandates that was a disaster for our country. But other than that, we had given them back a country where the stock market actually was higher than pre-COVID, and nobody thought that was even possible. The only jobs he created are for illegal immigrants and bounce back jobs, a bounce back from the COVID.
By the way, I see the Democrats are doing this as well. I don't think bragging about the stock market is a winning issue on either side right now. The stock market has become very disconnected to the experience of the average worker. Sure, they're correlated, but like in all things being equal, you'd want a high stock market. It's just top 10 of Americans own 93% of the stock market. If the stock market goes up like it did at the end of COVID, but the unemployment rate goes up at the same time, that's just bad. The stock market is just going up because of money printing and zero interest rate policy. So I think that's a losing issue actually for Trump to bring up at that point. And same with Democrats now. They're bragging about the stock market going up, but the inflation is still out of control, and there's still a lot of inflation that carried over from the peak years like in 2022. And like the median set wages are not nearly keeping up with how much the stock market has gone up.
He has not done a good job. He's done a poor job, and inflation's killing our country. It is absolutely killing us.
Thank you. President Biden?
Well, look, the greatest economy in the world. He's the only one who thinks that, I think. I don't know anybody else who thinks he had the greatest economy in the world. And, the fact of the matter is that we found ourselves in a situation where his economy, he rewarded the wealthy. He had the largest tax cut in American history, $2 trillion.
Yeah, but Biden's economy does the exact same. It's still rewarding the wealthy. So I don't get this. Like Biden has been anything but a champion for the middle class. Certainly not for Gen Z and millennials. Have you seen the cost of housing? Up 30%, perhaps even close to 40%, maybe even over 40%. I saw one figure in the United States since Biden's been in office. How is that not, like, wealthy people can absorb those costs, but not the average person certainly cannot.
Raised a deficit larger than any president has in any one term. He's the only president other than Herbert Hoover who's lost more jobs than he had when he began, since Herbert Hoover. The idea that he did something that was significant. And the military, you know, when he was president, they were still killing people in Afghanistan. He didn't do anything about that. When he was president, we were still finding ourselves in a position where you had a notion that we were this safe country. The truth is, I'm the only president this century that doesn't have any, this decade, that doesn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world like he did.
So that like, I mean, what he just said there is so patently false and was so called out. And it's so obvious that it's wrong. Sometimes you get a fact wrong in one of these debates because you say 32%, but you meant to say like 23%. Like you mix something up like that. But I'll play that one more time. He basically said no American serviceman or like someone that was in the American Armed Services or the American Army, the American military or whatever, just none of them passed away during his term. That's what he basically said, I believe.
The truth is, I'm the only president this century that doesn't have any, this decade, that doesn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world like he did.
That's so incorrect. That would be an incredible feat if you had 0 troops that passed away during your entire administration, which at this point have been like 3.5 years. That'd be an incredibly rare and amazing feat, but that's just completely false.
President Trump, I want to follow up if I can.
You want allowed to respond to him?
Well, I'm going to ask you a follow-up. You can do whatever you want with the minute that we give you. I want to follow up. You want to impose a 10% tariff on all goods coming.
The format of this debate, too, by the way, was so refreshing that CNN didn't jump in and try to debate on behalf of Biden. So I believe the next debate is with ABC, with, as Trump would say, Slopadopoulos. I don't know if he's actually one of the people moderating, but I hope they have a similar feel to that debate, because it was nice just to have the moderators not hopping in and trying to keep their name alive.
Coming into the U.S., how will you ensure that that doesn't drive prices even higher?
It's not going to drive them higher. It's just going to cost countries that have been ripping us off for years, like China and many others, in all fairness to China. It's going to just force them to pay us a lot of money, reduce our deficit tremendously, and give us a lot of power for other things. But he made a statement. The only thing he was right about is I gave you the largest tax cut in history. I also gave you the largest regulation cut in history. That's why we had all the jobs. And the jobs went down, and then they bounced back, and he's taking credit for bounce back jobs. You can't do that. He also said he inherited 9% inflation. Now, he inherited almost no inflation, and it stayed that way for 14 months. And then it blew up under his leadership because they spent money like a bunch of people that didn't know what they were doing. And they don't know what they were doing. It was the worst, probably the worst administration in history. There's never been. And as far as Afghanistan is concerned, I was getting out of Afghanistan, but we were getting out with dignity, with strength, with power. He got out. It was the most embarrassing day in the history of our country's life.
President Trump, over the last 8 years...
I would just add, debate's been going on at this moment, more like 6 minutes because there's about a 2-minute intro, but Joe Biden hasn't completely fallen off the wheels. He looks a little bit slow and his delivery is sloppy. The intro itself wasn't great, but at least at this point, Joe Biden's probably doing good enough to not be replaced.
Under both of your administrations, the national debt soared to record highs. And according to a new nonpartisan analysis, President Trump, your administration approved $8.4 trillion in new debt, while so far, President Biden, you've approved $4.3 trillion in new debt. So, former President Trump, many of the tax cuts that you signed into law are...
I forgot about this part. I just brought up Don Rickles there. A lot of this debate, Biden, his mouth. Don Rickles has a joke about when you're old, you got to close the mouth, because if your mouth is open, they just think that it's about time for you to like go into a nursing home. Oh, He's like, Dad, you got to close the mouth. Close the mouth. They'll never know. That's what I kept thinking of when they'd pan over to Biden. He's like,
expire next year.
by the way, this is a good question too. The debt, it is ridiculous how both, and then Trump, to be honest, he put on a ton of debt as well. Some of that debt would be justifiable because you had to do something during COVID to keep the lights on in the country, but the debt completely out of control. The service on the debt now is the service on the debt now is close to 1 trillion. I just had to double check those figures, but close to 1 trillion, close to what they spend on defense every single year, the United States. So the way they just keep running up the debt is incredible. If interest rates ever got to a place where they were actually at like right now, I think it's around 4 or 5. If it was actually at like 8 or 9, would be an absolute catastrophe. You'd think that the U.S. probably is going to try to lower them if they can get in. If they think there won't be any inflation, they're going to just try to get the interest rates down lower just so they can relieve some of that interest payment they got to do every single year. But we'll see what happens.
So former President Trump, many of the tax cuts that you signed into law are set to expire next year. You want to extend them and go even further, you say. With the U.S. facing trillion-dollar deficits and record debt, why should top earners and corporations pay even less in taxes than they do now?
Because the tax cuts spurred the greatest economy that we've ever seen just prior to COVID. And even after COVID, it was so strong that we were able to get through COVID much better than just about any other country. But we spurred, that tax spurred. Now, when we cut the taxes, as an example, the corporate tax was cut down to 21% from 39%, plus beyond that. We took in more revenue with much less tax, and companies were bringing back trillions of dollars back into our country. The country was going like never before, and we were ready to start paying down debt. We were ready to start using the liquid gold right under our feet, the oil and gas right under our feet. We were going to have something that nobody else has had. We got hit with COVID. We did a lot to fix it. I gave him an unbelievable situation with all of the therapeutics and all of the things that we came up with. We gave him something great. Remember, more people died under his administration, even though we had largely fixed it. More people died under his administration than our administration, and we were right in the middle of it, something which a lot of people don't like to talk about. But he had far more people dying in his administration. He did the mandate, which is a disaster, mandating it. The vaccine went out. He did a mandate on the vaccine, which is the thing that people most objected to about the vaccine. And he did a very poor job, just a very poor job. And I will tell you, not only poor there, but throughout the entire world, we're no longer respected as a country. They don't respect our leadership. They don't respect the United States anymore. We're like a third world nation between weaponization of his election, trying to go after his political opponent, all of the things he's done. We've become like a third world nation, and it's a shame. The damage he's done to our country. And I'd love to ask him, and will, why he allowed millions of people to come in here from prisons, jails, and mental institutions to come into our country and destroy our country.
The thing is, I don't know if any political candidate on the left or the right would feel comfortable being that negative about America. Some of the things that Donald Trump says there aren't even necessarily false. If you look at just the downtowns of major cities, they look terrible. Like if you look at a San Francisco, Philadelphia, there's some crazy footage that comes out of that city. Probably Austin, Texas. A lot of cities, if you look at like the most urban area in the downtown core, it looks tough. Crime, stuff like this, but it's pretty pessimistic to paint the entire country like that. Now, maybe you just have to get people to realize the problem, because there obviously is a massive problem with immigration over the southern border in the United States. The people that, the numbers have gone way, way up. It's basically seen as an issue now that both sides recognize that it can't go on any further. You might need someone to just be that blunt about it and just call like your country a third world country, even though it's got the highest GDP in the whole world by far. I don't know. It's interesting how Trump doesn't really pay any political price for that anymore, just to be like very pessimistic about the country, and then he goes on and in the next breath calls himself a patriot. But I'm not even saying I disagree with his style on this. It's just an observation.
President Trump, we will get to immigration later in this block. President Biden, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to this question about the national debt.
He had the largest national debt of any president in a 4-year period, number one. Number two, that $2 trillion tax cut benefited the very wealthy. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. Billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our health care system, wipe out his debt, we'd be in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help.
With $500 billion, you're not wiping out the debt with $500 billion.
Make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our health care system.
$500 billion. I believe he said over 10 years isn't putting a dent in anything. $500 billion. That's like, I don't know how much the U.S. debt goes up by every single day, but $500 billion would basically cover you for a short amount of time. And he's saying, pay off the debt, plus all these other things. Childcare, come on, bro.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the...
I mean, maybe he's just trying to do this is pretty much like the total uninformed voter pandering, perhaps, to just say, okay, there's 1,000 billionaires, let's just get them to pay for everything in the whole country. I mean, the math on that totally does not add up. It would barely do anything. I'm not saying that they should just not pay any taxes. Like, perhaps they should pay a little bit more, but it's very dishonest to frame it the way Joe Biden is right now. And that's like the sort of simpleton version of politics where you just think, oh, billionaires can just pay more in taxes and then we'll all be fine. That's not the way it works at all.
With the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right.
So yeah, that's like probably the one that went the most viral. Just completely ran out of steam. We finally beat Medicare, just a nonsensical statement on its own, and in the context of what he was talking about, makes no sense whatsoever. So it's sort of like a double whammy of just a statement that makes no sense.
Right, he did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare because all of these people are coming in. They're putting them on Medicare. They're putting them on Social Security. They're going to destroy Social Security. This man is going to single-handedly.
I didn't really appreciate how funny of a pivot this is. That he just goes into. He just goes into saying that how he did destroy this thing because of all the immigration. This is funny.
Social Security. These millions and millions of people coming in, they're trying to put them on Social Security. He will wipe out Social Security. He will wipe out Medicare. So he was right in the way he finished that sentence. And it's a shame. What's happened to our country in the last 4 years is not to be believed. Foreign countries, I'm friends with a lot of people. They cannot believe what happened to the United States of America. We're no longer respected. They don't like us.
Look at the difference in the knots. I think the ties. I think Biden's going. I think that's like a 4 in the hand knot. And I think Trump has a sort of a double Windsor, pretty big knot, really big pinch there. Maybe some tie expert will correct me, but I think that's what's happening there. Double Windsor, if I had to guess, and then Biden just has the 4 in the hand, or maybe a single Windsor, but I don't know. It looks like a 4 in the hand one to me. That actually, Biden's tie, most presidents don't usually, I don't think, have this type of knot. This is more of like a young person tie knot, I think. Anyway.
We give them everything they want, and they think we're stupid. They think we're very stupid people. What we're doing for other countries, and they do nothing for us. What this man has done is absolutely criminal.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
This is the first presidential election since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. This morning, the court ruled on yet another abortion case, temporarily allowing emergency abortions to continue in Idaho, despite that state's restrictive ban. Former President Trump, you take credit for the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, which returned the issue of.
This issue gets talked about. It's so interesting how much this issue gets talked about. Like RFK, I believe, makes a good point when he talks about just the American people, like he calls it the jangling of keys, focus on things like abortion or like transgender ideology or like culture war stuff, when the levels of chronic disease have gone completely off the charts from where they used to be just like a few decades ago. I don't know if he says this, I think he does, but just like the wealth inequality that's happened in the country, that matters way more. Like, I know abortion matters to some people, but oh my goodness, like it's like a top 3 issue in the last few elections. It gets brought up all the time. And by the way, I can see why people talk about it, because if you look at the polling, to many people, many people, abortion is their number 1 issue, and it's not even close in a lot of the polling. Like, I believe I saw a poll amongst young women. It's number 1, and it's not even close to what's the second issue. So, I mean, whether this is correct or not, whether this is just like a media psyop or it's legitimately what people should be focusing on. I don't think it should be number 1 issue. I would say that. There's a whole bunch of issues that affect everybody in the whole country. Cost of housing. I mean, they open with that question, but to make it this abortion, I'm not saying it shouldn't be an issue, but my goodness, does this ever get debated a lot?
Of abortion to the states.
Correct.
However, the federal government still plays a role in whether or not women have access to abortion pills. They're used in about 2/3 of all abortions. As president, would you block abortion medication?
I'm going to make the decision.
The Supreme Court just approved.
There's a section here that I believe will be an important kind of part in the debate, or at least like one of the most viewed things. I'm going to skip to that, and then I'm going to skip just a couple more times because I think I've kind of already covered what I want to cover in terms of Biden's. He had the mouth open once. He made that massive blunder that went incredibly viral where he says we finally beat Medicaid. And I think we have the general flow of this, that an American person watching this could reasonably look at this and say, I don't think Joe Biden can do this job for another 4 years. And I just don't want to hear another abortion debate. But we'll skip ahead a bit and see what we have here. We'll do that a couple more times. We'll go to the end, and then we'll close out the video.
Very conservative members on the Supreme Court. He takes credit for taking it away. What's he going to do? What's he going to do, in fact, if the MAGA Republicans, he gets elected, and the MAGA Republicans control the Congress, and they pass a universal ban on abortion, period, across the board at 6 weeks or 7 or 8 or 10 weeks, something very, very conservative. Is he going to sign that bill? I'll veto it. He'll sign it.
Thank you.
Let's turn now to the issue of immigration and border security. President Biden, a record number of migrants have illegally crossed the southern border on your watch.
Okay, so I caught this. So first of all, Trump tried to say something there.
Such as New York.
It's actually sort of an interesting part
immigration and border security.
There's a few things that happen there.
Across the board at 6 weeks or
Biden makes this claim about abortion, that Trump will sign an abortion ban, I believe is what he said.
7 or 8 or 10 weeks, something very, very conservative.
And then Trump,
is he going to sign that bill? I'll veto it. He'll sign it.
Thank you.
Let's turn now to
so Trump's actually trying to talk there, and it's interesting now looking at this in September, because there was controversy between Kamala and Trump recently on Twitter, and just between their two campaigns, about the rules for the upcoming debate, because of the rules for the upcoming debate, which is just happening, I believe 1 week from now, I believe it's September 10th. They're effectively, I don't know if they're exactly the same, but they're mostly the same to this debate, especially around the muting of the mics. And maybe this is an instance where Donald Trump would actually get himself in trouble, maybe by talking too much, because you see here on the image, I stopped on the funny part, but he's trying to talk, but the mic is muted. They actually don't even let him talk, so they just move on. So, I mean, maybe he'll mention that in a second here, Donald Trump, and just say like, hey, you didn't let me talk there, but it might be actually to his advantage, and same for the next debate, to just have the mic muted so he can't interrupt and just lets the person give their answer and whatever. He doesn't always have to get the last word in. Yeah, it's quite interesting. It looks like Trump's team, who wants the mics muted, has won so far. Kamala still comments on it, though, by the way. Some people speculate that she's commenting on it because she wants a way out of the debate. She's looking for just like an excuse to not do the debate, but I wouldn't go that far because there's no evidence of that yet. But I mean, I guess I see the speculation because she has complained about it a ton, actually. A ton. It's incredible that she completely changed. They completely could change the candidate, and she just did not. I sound like Biden here. She did not go to the debates that Trump won. Trump wanted 3. I believe one on September 4th. That would have been tomorrow on Fox. It's funny how Kamala got him basically to only do the one on the 10th with a new candidate. Like, Trump agreed to this debate with Joe Biden, not Kamala Harris. Kamala gets in there, and she still wants to change the rules. So I think it's good for Trump's team to just say, no, we're not, you don't get all these different rule changes, and we're going to keep the mics muted, because it seems like a lot of people said that she wants to have that moment where she tells Mike Pence, I'm speaking, Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. So anyway, Biden, by the way, in this image, mouth open again, not great. And then
the issue of immigration and border
watch this
security,
part here.
President Biden.
Watch Dana Bash's finger. Some people were saying that she's looking at Joe Biden and telling him where to look. I don't know if that's what she's doing, but what else would she be doing? Watch
Record
this.
number of migrants have illegally crossed the southern border on your watch. Overwhelming border states and overburdening cities such as New York and Chicago, and in some cases causing real safety and security concerns. Given that, why should voters trust you to solve this crisis?
Because we worked very hard to get a bipartisan agreement that not only changed all of that, it made sure that we are in a situation where you had no circumstance where they could come across the border with the number of border police there are now. We significantly increased the number of asylum officers. By the way, the Border Patrol endorsed my position. In addition to that, we found ourselves in a situation where when he was president, he was separating babies from their mothers, putting them in cages, making sure the families were separated. That's not the right way to go. What I've done since I've changed the law, what's happened? I've changed it in a way that now you're in a situation where there are 40% fewer people coming across the border illegally. It's better than when he left office. And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look, we had the safest border in the history of our country.
So that might have been the best line of Trump from the whole debate, and yeah, that was I was expecting that to start coming up when Biden started kind of spiraling there. I was even sitting here being like, is this the part where Trump used this line? Obviously, the answer is yes. Yeah, that was another tough look for Biden. So my memory at least served me correct in this. We are about 19 minutes into the debate in total, maybe just about 20. And I think those two moments, in my opinion, like, this is probably where the Democratic operatives behind the scenes are texting and calling each other saying, we got to do something. This is not going well at all. Millions of Americans, I believe 50 million roughly, watch this debate live. I believe that's the number. Don't quote me on that, but a bunch of people would have seen clips of this, like way more than that. And this is probably just when the operatives behind the scenes, whoever that is, it's not exactly clear, but they would have been, I think, panicking at this point. And CNN's Van Jones even made that point, I believe, at the broadcast after, that people behind the scenes were calling him. Yeah, I think that was Van Jones. But anyway, I'm going to skip ahead because
The board, all he
Trump
had to do
sort
was
of
leave
made
it.
his point there. I'll see what else I can get here because there is that other part where Trump has a good moment where he says that calling out Joe Biden for never firing anybody. I think that's actually a very, very interesting point, which I had not heard him make prior to this debate, but it's pretty telling in a sense because it's like Trump would say, okay, I got in and I actually fired people when they did a bad job. They did a good job, they kept their job, or they were promoted, or they were whatever, given, I guess in government you can't really get like a promotion, but they weren't fired. But if people were bad, they would get fired. And he's saying, like, I don't think Joe Biden ever fires anybody for the most part. That's actually a good point because it shows that when Trump was the president, he was actually the person in charge and would either fire people or hire people and move his cabinet around. But when Biden is in charge, it doesn't look like he's really the person calling the shots because very few people get fired. And the logic that comes from that is that the people that are really in charge in the Biden administration are the staff. And the staff, quote unquote, isn't going to fire itself. So when someone who has like a secretary position in the Biden administration does a poor job, it's not really Biden's call to fire him. That's at least what the insinuation is when Trump says, you never fire anybody. Why don't you ever fire anybody? So let's see what happens here. Just like a commercial break. See if this like a
Small black businesses that have been started at any time in history. Number two,
So
the wages of black unemployment
I
is
just
the
skipped ahead, by the way, like 50 minutes in the
lowest
debate.
level it's been in a long, long time. Number three, we're trying to provide housing for black Americans and dealing with the segregation that exists among these corporations that collude to keep people out of their houses. And in addition to that, we find that the impact on the choice that black families have to make relative to child care is incredibly difficult. When we did the first major piece of legislation in the past, I was able to.
So again, I skipped ahead to just a part in the YouTube timeline here that said it was a highly replayed section. This would have been a part where I didn't even catch this part during the debate because, like I said, I was watching in a communal area. There's other people around. That was very poor. That was a very poor answer. So it wasn't just the beginning and just the end. This is basically right in the middle of the debate, and that was a tough answer. It's hard to follow what he's talking about. He's mumbling all over the place, so I think that was tough. I think I'm just going to, he might have kept talking, but I'm going to move ahead. I'm just going to go to the end of the debate here and try to catch the part. I just want to make one final point here.
By President Trump in his last term. We find ourselves in a situation where,
this
number
is Biden's
one,
final remark.
we
I'm
have
not
to
going
make sure that we have a
play
fair
the whole
tax
thing, but I
system.
just want to show that.
I ask anyone out there in the audience, or anyone out watching this debate, do you think the tax system is fair?
It was
The fact is that
not
I
a great
said
finish. So
nobody even making under $400,000 had a single penny increase in their taxes, and will not. And if I'm reelected, that'll be the case again. But this guy has increased your taxes because of the deficit. Number one, he's increased inflation because of the debacle he left after the way he handled the pandemic. And he finds himself in a position where he now wants to tax you more by putting a 10% tariff on everything that comes into the United States of America. What I did, when, for example, he wants to get rid of the ability of Medicare us to be able to negotiate drug prices with the big pharma companies. Well, guess what? We got it down to $35 for insulin instead of $400. No more than $2,000 for every senior, no matter how much prescription they need. You know what that did? That reduced the federal debt by $160 billion over 10 years because the government doesn't have to pay the exorbitant prices. I'm going to make that available to every senior all along, it's happening now, and everybody in America. He wants to get rid of that.
So yeah, like that, obviously that's just not the harsh truth. And obviously this has already been sorted out in the public, but that's just not good enough to be the president. So, I mean, he still is the president right now, though, but at least to run for the next 4 years. So now we said it's September 3rd. There's a debate between Trump and Kamala coming up in 1 week's time. How do you all think the debate is going to go? Let me know in the comments below. I'll stop this video for now. I, to be honest, don't think Kamala is going to do very good. And that's based on the fact that how is this poor person supposed to have any confidence in herself when either it's her or, in all likelihood, people around her in the Democratic Party telling her not to do media. Don't do unscripted things. She got out of her motorcade yesterday wearing headphones, and people were saying just so she doesn't have to answer any media. At least Joe Biden yesterday went up to the media and took a few questions. Kamala gets out wearing headphones, so it just walks right by. She only has done, I think, 1 or 2 incredibly minor media scrums since she's been the Democratic presumptive nominee, or has been very likely that she's going to be. It's been about 45, I believe, getting close to 50 days now. She's done 1 interview with CNN, with actually Dana Bash, who's in this clip as well. But how is she supposed to have confidence when she's only done 1 interview? And the clear strategy is just to do as few as possible and speak off a teleprompter. There's no teleprompter at a debate. So just as a human being, how are you going to go into that feeling confident in your abilities? You're probably going to be so nervous that there's going to be so much scrutiny on you because you do these extemporaneous speeches so few and far between that there's going to be such a microscope on what you say. I just think it's tough. That's incredible pressure. So that's my thought on that, is that Trump gets the advantage on that for sure, that he's always practicing answering questions, and a whole bunch of variety of questions too, from hostile reporters, friendly reporters, etc. So anyway, we'll see what happens. Either way, I'm excited to watch that debate. But like I said, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching this video. Have a good day.